All right, welcome to our Tuesday creation time together. There we go. And today we are going to be using Procreate to create some elegant holiday gift tags. So I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek of what we're creating today. And while it might seem like it's going to take quite a bit, it's just 4 things over and over. So we do one text, duplicate it. We do one leaf, duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. We do one set of berries, duplicate, and then one flower and duplicate that. And then we just work on the layout a little bit in order to get it to intertwine with the letters. So this is what we're going to be creating. So if you have Procreate, pull out your iPad and let's get started. I'm going to open up a new document. And when you are creating your new document, because we're wanting to print this, let's create it on an 8.5 by 11. So if you don't already have that set, you can just go in, change to inches, and then put 8.5 by 11 or scribble, or whatever size your printer takes. That's the size that you want to set right here. All right, once we have created that, I'm going to be creating this just in black and white because I don't want to assume that anyone has access to a color printer. And black and white, if you use a nice white cardstock, the black will look absolutely gorgeous when you print off your tags. And that way too, it matches with any, I should really close that window just a sec. It matches with any wrapping that you might have, so you don't have to worry about that. So again, this is Procreate that I'm using here, and we've just set up an 8.5 by 11 canvas. Now you want to go in because you want to know where each tag should sit. I mean, one piece of paper, this is going to be the largest tag in the world. If we go in and use our grid, so click on your actions and then canvas here. If you turn on your drawing guide, you'll see that you have a grid that's set, but it's kind of useless, this tiny. So if you go into edit drawing guide here, then you can change your grid size. You can increase or decrease. And what we want to do is we want to set it so that we have 4 tags going across and 2 top and bottom. And now the 2 top and bottom, that's not really working because we have that line here, but we have a middle line and then we have 3 divisions to create 4 tags. So this sheet here will get us 8 tags. So once you've adjusted your grid size so that this outer line goes just to the edge, oh, one too many, and you can always tap on that and take it down just a little bit more so that it's perfect. Then you want to click done, and that's just going to be sitting in the background so that we have a sense of where we're working. So zoom in onto one of your rectangles. Now your rectangle, just to make it super clear, is this area right here. That's what you're going to be working in. You're ignoring this one right here, but you can see this gives us 8 rectangles to work in. And then up here, oops, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have our 8 rectangles set. Now, of course, we're not going to keep those. That's hideous. Delete, or just turn it off. So zooming into one rectangle, you want to create a new layer here. And you know what? Let's start off with our text. So to add your text, go up into your actions, and here you're going to choose add and then add text. And now if you have your scribble feature turned on, it can be a little bit confusing because it doesn't give you your keyboard right away, but you can scribble. Select just by drawing over it, and then it will give you the option to bring up your keyboard, which you have to tap on with your finger or it doesn't work. So once you have your keyboard there, we'll do one that says hope. So type in just the H and the O, caps lock, H-O. We want it to be capitals. And then we're going to change the letter style. So going to that little double A up in the corner, you want to choose the DIN condensed or some letter style. Oh, and it's not highlighted, so it's not actually going to change it. Highlight it, keyboard, into the style, DIN condensed, there we go. Whew. And you want something that's going to be quite bold, and I like something as well that doesn't take up too much space horizontally, something that's a little bit more vertical. Now I'm just going to zoom out a little bit because we want to have it large enough that it fills in a lot of the space, but not so large that we don't have anywhere to draw. So probably let's do about 125. And if you want to get exact, you can tap on the amount or the size, type in 125, and then it will be exactly that. And doing that will be nice because then we'll know the consistent size for the rest of our letters for our other tags. Okay, once we have that done, let's click done. And now we're going to move it and everything, but let's create the rest of our word before we forget. And we just put a tag out there that says ho. You know, unless you have 3 of them, it's not necessarily a nice message to put on a Christmas tag. All right, duplicating this, just pull it across to the side until you can tap duplicate. Then we'll go into one of them. I typically like to do the bottom one just because then it still says the word hope, otherwise it's peho, and that for me is just a bit confusing. So if you tap on the layer again, you'll get your pop-out menu right here, and you can choose edit text. And remember to select it. Select. Darn it, the scribble. I knew I should have turned it off. Okay, we'll go into keyboard. We've got it. There we go. Okay, let me see if it'll let me. Nope, still not letting me select. Flibbity gibbet. There we go. If in doubt, just tap a million times until it works. Okay, so we still have our style, we still have our size, and all of that set because we did the duplicate. If you put in a new layer, you'll have to reset all of that. So once that part's done, we can click back to our keyboard, Jingleheimer Schmidt, delete it, and type in our P and E, but we need capitals, so there we go. All right. My goodness. Now we're going to go through and shift these into place. So stack one right on top of the other. You don't want to have too much space in between the two so that it looks like the space from letter to letter is about the same as the space from line to line. That way it keeps it as a unit. Now, we want to group both of those. So select both of your layers and group them. And that way, if you move it, you'll always be moving them together because we like how they're set together, but they're not necessarily set the best in the tag. So click on your group to select both of them, and you're going to choose your arrow up here so that you can shift it down so that it's pretty much in the center of your tag. Now, no one's going to be perfectly measuring this, just eyeball it to do your best. Okay, once we have that set, we need another new layer. So on top of that, we are going to draw our very first floral portion. You want to use a brush like the Studio pen, so that's inside inking. And the reason that this one's nice is because it has a little bit of change with your pressure, but not too much change with your pressure, so that you can draw something like 3 leaves. 1, 2, that one was a bit flat on the top. 2 and 3 leaves, and there's a little bit of variation in the thickness of your lines, but not too much. So drawing in your 3 leaves there, you can even put your little detail line on the inside, and remember your detail line, you always want it a little bit lighter than your outer lines, just to make it look like detail versus the outside shape. And once you have that, we're going to duplicate that a few times. Now, when you duplicate, your new duplicate is on top. You always still want to duplicate off the bottom one because that will duplicate off of your original rather than duplicating a copy of a copy of a copy, which sometimes can look not so nice, especially if you have to zoom in or you want it to be more detailed. So we have 5 duplicates. You don't have to do that many, but now we're going to go through and rotate these guys and then place them around your piece. You can also resize them a little bit so that they look different. Place them around and inside the piece so that they're coming off of your letters. These ones are sort of supporting pieces. They're not the pieces that are going to be going behind your letters so much because then it just hides them. But they can be coming out in the middle here, which works. So you want to put them around the edge to sort of highlight your letters a little bit. Now you don't want to drag straight down and just keep it the exact same. Make sure that you're resizing or rotating a little bit, or you can even flip it vertically or horizontally to make sure that it looks different every time. even though we're using the exact same image over and over. And we can even have that going behind the letter. That's totally fine. Now we're going to add in our next, let's do one more actually. So we'll still duplicate off the bottom and then shift that in. And I like to put sometimes more than I need because you can, whoa, no, you can always go back and adjust and erase too. So don't think that once you have it on there, you're stuck with it. Okay, so we filled in some of the space. Now let's do our branches. And again, we'll need a new layer. So we have all of our leaf layers like that. We're gonna take a new layer and draw a branch. So same brush, just draw a line, and you don't want it to be super streamlined. You want it to have these little bumps and areas where it shifts off, because that's where in nature another branch comes off of. So look for those bits here where it's not perfectly straight, and that's where you're going to draw your next branch. So even here, it wasn't perfectly straight. Oh, it needs to actually match up. Wasn't perfectly straight there. Even in here, not perfectly straight, so there could be another branch coming off. There we've got another one. Here we've got another one. And if you look for those places, that's how you'll get a stick that looks the most natural. Look for areas where there's already a natural bend point. Here, there could be one. Oh, and then off that. And once you have a stick, I mean, you might like the look of the stick itself. So you can even just keep one of those and duplicate it and turn off the visibility of one so that you sort of have it just saved in the background, just in case you don't like what it looks like after you add the berries. Because we're going to be adding the berries on this same layer. The idea of this design is that everything is happening on one layer for each of these little images that we're putting in here, rather than each of these leaves being on a single layer. So drawing circles on the ends, again, add some variation, not just in size, but also in your pressure within a berry or from berry to berry. And you don't have to be absolutely perfect with this. Again, we're just doing a sketch, and there's going to be so much in the area that you won't notice tiny imperfections. You can give little attachment points for your berries. Or if you want to have a berry here, oh, but you can't see the attachment, maybe this is the bottom, you can even draw in the bottom of a berry. Just with little tiny lines coming out. Okay, and you want to draw one off of the ends of each of these. That one went well out of place. And then look, so right now I'm seeing this straight across line right there, which is not great. You really should have it going in and out like it is here. So either you can add on another berry. So he could be coming off of right here. He's just like tucked in behind to break up that straight line. Or if you notice it as it's happening, just go in and remove one of those berries. So once you have your berries, and it's nice to do it over in a side area because then it doesn't get confusing with the other stuff you've got going on. Now you're going to duplicate that. And again, duplicating from your original layer. You're probably not going to want to put quite as many of the berries in, but pick up a single berry section and put it inside your piece. Now you might also realize that, oh, there's really, Amanda, you went a bit nuts with all these berries here. So if you don't want the whole section, you can always go in on one of your layers that's still sitting there and chop. Maybe we just want this little branch. And then use your lower menu here to choose copy and paste. And you'll see that you now have a layer where it's just a few berries, not quite so many. Because you know what, this is potentially going to get a little bit confusing with all of the other layers that we're going to put in there. So let's try using just the tiny thing of berries. Now this guy kind of looks angry. Looks like a little angry berry. So let's just give him something to attach to there. All right, So we have our angry berries. I'm going to give it just a few sticks so that it's got a little bit more detail. And we can even duplicate straight off that. Oh, duplicate from the bottom one and from the bottom. Okay, so let's use the smaller version. And so much of working on Procreate or, you know, doing any of the work that you do, whether it's paper, pencil, or electronic, is just going through and playing around and seeing what actually works. So don't be afraid to change up your idea, even if you're doing a live video on Instagram and YouTube. It's okay. So go in, pick each of those up using your move tool, rotate them, and again, get them tucked sort of in and amongst your letters. We're going to start to really fill in that space with the berries and with our next object. So let's do a few more duplicates, maybe just one more. Pick that one up, shift it inside, and remember to rotate or even flip it so that it does start to look a bit different. And if you're trying to, as we start to get more and more layers and they look the same because they are the same over and over, you can always just press and hold on the layer and it will automatically go to that one in all of your layers. So again, that's just press and hold, and you'll see it show up right there. And then when you choose your move tool, it's going to be already isolating just that layer. So we'll put those berries down there. And we have a little bit more to fill in, but we're gonna fill it in with a flower. So still using your exact same studio pen, over in an empty tag, just draw a simple flower shape. And again, you don't want it to be perfect. So even on this studio pen, it doesn't have high streamline, which is perfect for getting these natural sorts of lines. And that is not perfect. I don't like how those two went together. Ah! I didn't like how they went so close into the middle together. So this is going to be a bit better. There we go. And now look at your edges where you have, again, these little areas where it didn't go straight. You want to just pull down a few lines coming into your petal, and that will give it a more natural look. It'll also give it a look of those lines making sense because that's where the folds are happening. So we'll even do some folds down here, and you can turn your flower as you're doing it just to make it easier for you to get those nice tapered lines. And remember, you don't want it to be as thick as your edge line. Just adding detail here. Well, let's do one more over on that edge. And now we're going to do the same thing from the middle out. So fill in, because we're not going to draw a center to the flower. Instead, we're going to use these little lines to give us our floral center. So just pulling them out right from the center there to give us that depth and dimension. And you want to make sure that you're actually closing that center portion in, because later we are going to go in and, oh, yeah, I need something there. We're going to go in and probably do some filling of some of our petal areas. So making sure that all of your lines are closed is really important. So like here we still have some open areas. Just go in and close all of that off. All right, we've got it all closed. Now, guess what we're going to do next? You probably know. Oh no, it's on the same layer. We're going to be duplicating it, but if we do that, we're going to be duplicating this set of berries as well because I forgot to put in a new layer. So if that happens, no problem. Just use your selection tool, draw around it, and then we are going to go into our actions, and in here, cut it, and then paste. And so it's taken it off of that other layer and it's put it onto its own layer. And now the berry's all by itself, happy in the corner. Okay, let's duplicate that flower a few times. Do it about 5, that should be good to fill it in. And now we're going to start to shift them into place throughout the piece. And you'll notice that it's huge. It's ginormous. We don't want it nearly that big. We want it to look like it's still in scale with the other objects. So you're going to want to shrink it down And remember to rotate some of these as you go so that they don't all look the same. And that can also help with your placement. Now, you want to be placing in behind some of the letters, and you also want to think about how you can have portions of your flower potentially tuck over your letters, because these flowers are actually going to be playing with your letters and with the other elements in your piece. And what I mean by that is they're going to be overlapping. Sometimes it'll overlap, sometimes it'll underlap, not a word, I don't think so, but it is now. So sometimes it'll go underneath, and you want to be able to have that happening. And that means that sometimes you need to have just a little bit peeking into a letter. Okay. And while we're placing all of these, don't think that it has to be perfect the way that it is, but you mostly want to have flowers coming all the way around, or floral elements, so leaves or berries. Like I noticed we could use something over here, maybe some berries, but you also want to have it happening in the middle, because now we're going to go through and start to decide where our layers are. So what's sitting on top of other things? Right now, the flowers are sitting on top of the berries, which are sitting on top of the leaves. We also have our sticks, which we haven't used. And we have our big berries, which we also haven't used. So anything that you haven't used, if you don't want to get rid of it, just group it and turn off the visibility and move that down to the bottom. So, no. I just want to move it down so that you don't get confused. There we go, down to the bottom. All right, now it could be confusing because we do have so many layers. So one option is that you can go through and rename all of your pieces. So for instance, we'll press and hold. Come on. Nope, he doesn't want to work for me. You can always turn off and on the visibility, and we'll see that this is the leaf for layer H. You can rename it because it's off of the H here. Scribble H. And then this one, you can go through and do this, especially if it's a more complicated one. Go through and rename it all. Otherwise, just play around. And you can always turn off and on the visibility to see which one's layering on top. So for instance, turning that one on and off, we end up seeing that we have an overlap right here where the leaf and the flower are going on top or behind of one another. We have to make a decision as to which one's going on top. So if we were to fill this leaf, just this one, with white, it's not doing anything because it's actually placed underneath the flower in our layers. If we move it up, let's undo that fill. Sorry, just want to undo the color drop. There we go. So if we were to move that to the top, thinking, well, that'll fix our problems because now it's on top, it still doesn't make a difference. But if we go in and do that color drop with it on top, then it fills that in and you can't see the flower in behind. So now we have to go through and see where we can actually have our flower overlapping over some of the letters. And the only places that you want to have that happen are places where you can still then see the top portions of the letter or the portions of the letter that are important to see. So we can have that petal of the H coming over. This petal then should also probably be coming over. So let's drop and fill that in. And you want to go through and do this very thing where you're filling in. First, let's do the flowers. Filling in parts of the flowers that would be sitting on top. So I'm only going to do those two sections of the flowers because if we were to do everything else, it could start to be quite hard to figure out what letter that is. So that's why we don't want to do all of the petals. You could do just those two and have it kind of poking up over the top, or you could potentially even do those three, but then it kind of looks like it's wearing a hat. So you know what, let's just keep it at those three and not that fourth one. Now, if we were to do this flower, what I like to do is I actually will drop in the white to fill those layers in and then see what it looks like. See if it's still easy to read, or now I find that this flower is becoming very prominent. So which ones should be going over top and which ones should stay in behind? You could maybe have one popping over top there, but let's have the berries come on top. So we don't need to, I mean, you can fill in that. It won't make a difference because we'll have to pull the berries on top of that layer. But let's continue to go through our flowers. So looking at this flower now, and again, we'll fill some in just to see what it looks like. If you fill them all in, it's going to be hard to read that O, and the flower really takes over. So consider which ones you want to do the color drop on. Now this isn't going to make any sense because that is splitting then the flower in half. Instead, we could just have those two sides poking through. So let's keep it like that, and we'll look at this flower down here. Again, just pressing until that little layer option comes up so that we are selecting on this layer. Now here's where we're starting to get into it being tricky, because this could have a B curving around, and cutting off the ends of the E there, it's hard to then see that important part of the letter. So we'll probably want to keep this flower in behind. Let's select this one down at the bottom, because I think this one could probably come on top of the E here, and it doesn't change the overall look of the E because you still can see the important parts of the letter that make it an E. So there we go, we've done two. Maybe this leaf could go, or this petal could go on top. But I'll keep this one underneath because again, that's an end to the letter, and those parts can be really important for making sure that it looks like its letter itself. So keep those ends nice and clean for all of your letters. All right, we have our flowers done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of our overlaps have been dealt with. So now we need to decide for our, let's do our berries. Which ones are going to be on top? So I think that filling in that berry could be nice. And we can fill in this berry because it only covers part of the P here. But now we have an overlap happening with this other flower. So in order to deal with that, you can bring your berry up on top. This one is filled in with white. So if it's sitting on top of this layer, you won't be able to see it. It'll be blocked out. Let's look at our next berry here. We have another berry flower interaction going on, and we have to decide which one do we want on top. Do we want the flower on top, or do we want the berry on top? And I think for this one, let's again move the berry up on top of the flowers, and maybe we'll even put it a little bit on top of the E too. I think that's okay for legibility. Maybe this berry should stay in behind. And you've also probably noticed I zoom in and out a lot because while it might look okay zoomed in, when you zoom out, you realize that it doesn't actually look very good, and that might need to be fixed. Now here we have an issue where the berry goes on top of the flower, but the flower is supposed to be on top of the berry. And rather than trying to figure out in layers, we can simply use a mask for that. So we want the flower to stay on top. We're gonna have to get rid of a little part of the berry. We don't want to delete or erase because then we can't undo that. Instead, if you click on the layer, you can choose to do a mask. And now it will set up a white layer already. And with black, you're simply going to draw on your layer mask to remove any of the branch or berry that is sitting inside the flower. Now we obviously have something else sitting there. It's the leaf that's in behind. And actually looking at that leaf, it's not doing a lot. It's mostly just being hidden by everything else. So if we can select it, there's our leaf. Let's see, we've got that one, which is okay. It's not even great. We kind of need it for a little bit of something here. We also have, what is this line? What are you, line? Oh, it's part of a flower. See, it's one of our other flowers. It's getting very confusing. So again, because we don't know where all of these are in our layers. You can look at playing around with them. Otherwise, you can always slap in one of those masks and color over the piece you don't want to have there. So looking at it, I want this leaf to come on top of this flower here. So selecting that one, you can drop your color in, but it didn't completely cover it. We don't want it to go so that it's covering the E, but we need to move it up higher above the flowers in the layers. So shifting it up higher, it will cover up here, but we don't want it to cover the E. So what can we do? We're going to apply a mask and just apply a mask to, no, we want the leaf part. We're not going to apply a mask to him. We're going to apply a mask to the flower. So make sure you select the flower. Good. Click on it, mask. And we want to get rid of all of those flower portions that are happening below the leaf. So just coloring it in with black. And you can see, of course, we're getting something else that's getting in the way here. And as you go around and clean this up, there are also some layers that you're not even going to need to really clean up, because once it's printed and it's small, you're not really going to notice it. One thing that I'm really noticing though is this part of the flower right here that's going on top of the berry. It already has a mask, and it's nice because you can just add to that. So if you were to start coloring right now over your mask, no, we have to select the mask. If you select the mask and then were to start coloring, you want to just pay attention to what it is you're coloring out so that it still looks realistic. For instance, you won't see it in the berry section, but you'll probably still see it coming in behind. So just do some of it. Otherwise, if you find, well, no, it's still just looking quite busy in there, then go in and erase it. No one's going to be thinking, oh, where's the tiny bit of the petal that comes in the top here? It'll be much nicer if it all just looks seamless for them. Okay, so we're still working in that mask because we have this part of the flower that we have to get rid of. And you're starting to see the elements. Ow, oh, I just stuck my hand on Lego. Darn, what is this? That's part of a Christmas ornament. You're going to start to see that things are getting a little bit cleaner, but you still have some areas where there's overlap. So remember to zoom out. We want the berry on top, which it probably is. Let's select the berry layer by tapping. There it is from selection, and drag into those berries. Because the layer is on top, it will cover over the leaf, and it's beautiful. Okay, let's deal with this little bit right down here, and then I think most of our issues have been fixed just by dragging that part so that it has color. Now you're starting to see, okay, there are a few final areas where there are overlaps, but most of it is getting quite clean. So here, because if we fill in the leaf, we're going to cover up that part of the P, which is quite important. Instead, let's select our flower and go in. It doesn't have a mask yet, so we'll apply a mask. On that mask layer, just color out that part of the flower so that the leaf is on top. And we have a really, really nice handmade gift tag right there with the word hope. Now you can use any word that you want. You could have hope, joy, love, what else? Peace. Peace would be hard because it has the 5 letters. If you were to do joy, you'd want to do 3 letters stacked most likely, or just joy going across, or you can even do it the other direction. So actually, let's do one in the other direction. Okay, we'll do joy here. So all of these that we have going on are lovely. And we are going to reuse these so that we don't have to start from scratch, which is really nice. But we don't want to have all of them. So let's go down and duplicate one of each of them right from the bottom and then place it up at the very top. Okay, so we have one leaf. We're going to duplicate our lowest down. Actually, I do want to duplicate this one, but because it has some spots colored in, let's duplicate one that has nothing colored in. So we're kind of working with a blank slate, and move that up to the top of your layers. And then we're also going to duplicate one flower. Oh, well, we have one that has masks, but that's easy enough to delete. So let's choose that one as opposed to ones that are already partially colored in. Actually, no, let's choose one that's partially colored in. So we'll duplicate that, move him up to the top, or her, you know, either one. And then select all of your other layers all the way down and group them. And now we're going to close that group so we don't have to look at it again. It's a bit much. Now these three, select all of them, just shift them up so that they're on your new area. I'm going to even move them to the side so that they're not in the area for our creation. And let's also duplicate one of our lettering layers and bring that up. And again, we'll shift that one up. Here we go. Move it to the side. Oh, I don't have my lock on. Good enough. And we want to now close that group as well. Perfect. We have our different elements, and now all we have to do is change this one out. So we'll select all of it, choose our keyboard, and in here write joy instead. Oh, all capitals again. And if you want to change your font or anything, you can go in and do that. But really the easiest type of font is something bold like this that is monoline, so the same weight all the way around. And once you have that done, you can click done. If you wanted to make it bigger too, you can always just pull out your corners if you don't want to go in and adjust it. Let me try to center it. If you don't want to go in and adjust it individually inside the text, you can always just drag out your corners a little bit. Okay, so we've got that guy in there. Let's start to place some of our elements, but you know what we have to do first. We're going to duplicate it a few times. So let's just start with 5 of each. And it's going to be interesting because we already have some flower leaves, petals, flower petals, they're not leaves, colored in. And in a way that might actually make it easier to be able to place them quickly and work your overlaps right away. So first let's do our leaves. They're sort of the backbone of everything. And again, rotating, make sure you don't go too close to the edge as well. Like that one I wanted to have come off there, but it would have gone over the edge of that tag, and that's why we have those borders in there. Placing every single one of these throughout, rotating, sort of make it look like it's growing off the side of your letters. And you can even think about placing them in between, but that looks really repetitive. So let's not and say we did. And sometimes you'll notice, like if you put it here, it just gets completely lost. Oops. So let's instead put it down here where we have a nice opportunity potentially for an overlap, but not too much that we're losing either the leaf if it stays in behind, or we're losing the J itself. And don't forget to resize as well so that they look different from one another. I'm going to resize this one too so that he looks a little bit different. And two, that way it won't go quite as much over top of the J. And once you have all of those placed, let's move on to the berries next. Yep, sure, that can go there. Okay, we've got our berries. And placing those around, again, look for your opportunities to have a little bit of overlap, but you don't want to have the overlap happening somewhere where it's actually important to see that portion of the letters. So the ends of your letters, and then any area where it could potentially be mistaken for another letter if you were to cover it up. Mostly just pay attention to the ends of your letters though. Those are the easiest ones to lose legibility with. Another thing that you might want to do with these as you're placing them is just try to minimize the overlaps that are happening from layer to layer. So instead of placing it here, you might want to just shift it over a little bit so that it's not overlapping, which just means a few less steps for you at the end. And the other nice thing is you don't have to come up with a million different designs. You can come up with, 3 different designs and then just duplicate them throughout your piece, print them over and over, and you are set. You don't have to recreate everything all the time. Now that's looking very similar. We might need to delete that. It might be quite berry heavy in this section, actually. Just moving it around to see if there's somewhere that I like it better. I'm just going to place them over there to the side. Now with the flower, because it already has a few petals filled in theory, it's underneath. Okay, we have to put the joy down. I mean, keep your joy up, but we're just going to move them down underneath all of our petals and leaves. There we go. Now you'll see that we already have some of the petals filled in. So it's kind of nice because it can give you a sense of your overlaps already without having to do a lot more. So for instance, placing it there, you already know it's going to overlap the O and it's pretty good. And then you could see, right, if I just fill in this part, that works really well. And boom, that part's already done. It means that your flowers will be on top, but another thing that you could do is you could always put it down lower and then put it in place and see where it works best. Let's make this one a little bit smaller. And we can have it going like that, where it's just sort of tucking a little bit over the J. Now in here, we still have a bit of confusion. Now, do I love that one going over top? It's maybe a bit much. This reminds me of a pig nose right here. That's okay. So, putting that one in. I just wanted to take out, not the whole thing. Just wanted to take out the fill of that. Now it's not letting me, so we're going to keep it. All right, take our next one here and move it into place. And now we're move it into place. And we're trying to fill in that space in the center, but we don't want necessarily to have it completely covering the O like this. So if that's happening, you'll probably need to just take that layer and move it down underneath the O so that the underneath. No, not into that group. Silly. Okay. You need to go out of this group and go underneath. There we go. Oh, phew. So now we have it underneath the O where it was supposed to be. We have a little bit of space up here. We have a few more elements, or you can always duplicate another flower. But let's just take this flower and move it so that it will fill that space there. And we can have it coming over top of the Y there a little bit. That's okay. It's coming over top of this other flower, which I'm not sure I love. So if we even just shift that underneath, not into a group again, shift it underneath, then it covers that up. This still looks like a pig. I don't know. This, I can't handle it. So you know what? Is it this one? No. Is it this one? Yes. We can always just select that and delete some of it. I'll just delete all of that bit. There we go. Now, once you have finished your berries and you've got all of your details, you have it filled in how you'd like, you can go through and delete any of your extra layers. And if you don't know which ones they are, just press and hold on them so that you can turn them off or delete them. And then once you're done, you can simply select everything in that layer and shift it up so that you can print pages of joy and hope. I'm also going to do love and one other one. And then I will create a printable for you so that if you want, you can print these off. You can even print them off on watercolor paper and then just go in and with some watercolor, add some color to them. If you don't want them, just in white and black. So I hope that you enjoyed following along with this and that you now are thinking of how you can do your own. It's actually really simple. You don't have to draw a lot. You just have to go through, play around with your layers a bit, fill in some of those layers, create a few masks if you need to, and you have your own handmade, beautiful Procreate gift tags. I will see you again next Tuesday for our next live session where I can't remember what we're going to be doing, but it's something Christmas related and it's going to be awesome. I'll see you then. Bye.